It's Christmas Eve, I'm 10 years old, and I'm being rushed to hospital in the back of an ambulance. My mum's crouched over me with her rosary beads praying for my survival, which is actually the last thing you want when you're lying in the back of an ambulance. 10 minutes later, I'm in the hospital, and a doctor comes in to find out what the problem is. Looking back, or at the time actually, I remember thinking the doctor looked a lot like Father Christmas. But now, looking back, he had much more of the look of, the infamous serial killer, Dr. Shipman, about him. Anyway, I told him I had an excruciating pain in my right side. Shipman had a feel, and he said that his first impression was appendicitis. He said they'd have to do some tests, but if his suspicions were confirmed, I'd have to go straight to surgery and have my appendix removed. I remember looking across at my mum. She was on the 10th decade of the rosary by this point. She'd gone completely white. And for the first time, I felt a little bit guilty. Because what my mum didn't know, and what Harold Shipman didn't know yet, was that I was faking the entire thing. Let me tell you why. So exactly a year earlier at Christmas, my best friend Christopher had fallen out of a tree and broken his shoulder. Trees were still the number one kids' Christmas toy back then. Anyway, on Christmas Eve, my mum had taken me in to visit Chris in hospital. It was the first time I'd been into a hospital. I remember as we walked through the doors, we opened the doors for the children's ward, and it was like walking into Disney World. There were all these colours and teddies. I saw Chris lying on this big, comfortable bed with all the buttons and the up and down. He had a milkshake. He was playing with Star Wars figures. It looked joyous. And so I said to Chris, are you a bit sad that you won't get to spend Christmas Day at home with your family? And he said, not really, no. He said, Father Christmas is coming to the ward tomorrow, and he's going to meet all the children individually and give us all presents. And that was my first impression of a hospital. And if I'm being honest, I quite liked it. And first impressions last, don't they? So by the time the following Christmas came around, I decided that year I was going to be the lucky one. I was going to spend Christmas Day in a hospital bed. The plan was on the 23rd of December, I would take myself to the local woods and throw myself out of a tree. Not very original, I know. But as it happened, on the last day of school term before the Christmas holidays, we did a show and tell. And a girl called Colette, she brought in a glass jar, with her brother's appendix inside. Yeah? Shipman had been at it again, I think. And she went into great detail about how her brother had been rushed into hospital with excruciating pain in his right side. And I thought, perfect. So over that weekend, I got a little bag ready under the stairs with pajamas and an empty glass jar in. And here I was on Christmas Eve in hospital with excruciating pain in my right side. I was exactly where I wanted to be. They did the tests, and then they sent me to the children's ward while we waited for the results. The first thing I did was dash over to the kids' toy box. My mum's there with her rosary beads thinking, wow, that worked quick. I look in the box, there's not much in there. There's certainly not any Star Wars figures, which I was hoping for. But there was a nativity set, nativity figure. So I did my best with that. I pretended the Virgin Mary was Princess Leia, Joseph, Han Solo, and the shepherds, obviously, stormtroopers. At one point, a nurse came over to ask if we were okay, if we needed anything. I said, can I have a chocolate milkshake with cream and sprinkles, please? She said, no. She said, we can give you some water. Eventually, Shipman shows up with the results. He says to my mum, good news. We've done the tests. We can find absolutely nothing wrong with him. He said, worst case, it's a bit of constipation. And then he looked at me and smirked. I'll never forget the look. He looked at me and smirked as if to say, I know you're full of shit. And then he reached into his pocket and he pulled out this tablet, this pill, the biggest one I'd ever seen. He called it a suppository. And he asked me to turn on my front and bend over. And in many ways that Christmas Eve, a bearded man did squeeze his hand down my chimney and leave me a small gift, but not in the way I'd hoped. When he'd finished, he took off his surgical gloves, he had a bite of his mince pie, and he told my mum they'd give it an hour or so for the suppository to work, and then they'd send us home in time for Christmas. Great. I fell asleep on the bed while we waited, with the nativity toys scattered all around me. The next thing I remember is waking up to the most foul stench and hearing my mum say, "Oh no, there's shit all over the baby Jesus." And the only thing I could think was, there goes my Luke Skywalker. Anyway, thank you.